I've heard 4 points that seems to be supported around the table. But one of them I do think Deputy Mayor Mangle has already been addressed. We did draft a clause restricting the nightly rental amount to 20%. I thought that was circulated, but you might not have seen it. But it was, that has already been drafted and agreed to between town and the developer at 20%. So I think if 20% is okay, then I think that one is done. But the other 3 things are to confirm the access egress plan, what that is, to make some improvements to the facade, particularly consistent with the architectural guidelines, or more consistent, perhaps more consistent with the architectural guidelines. And the third thing is the number of units, but we haven't been given any direction yet on what that number of units is. And so just, I don't think we can leave it open. You have to decide what you want to target there, and then we can go away and see if we can make that work. I don't know that it's as much about the number of units as I think it is around some mixed configuration, which I think we already have some of that, we just don't know what. So I think we need to kind of get to the bottom of that and see if it needs to be improved to introduce some additional, what you call room types than what's currently in the proposal.
Would it be so that the council can give clear direction and then still leave a fair amount of leeway for the developer, would it be reasonable for us to suggest that a certain percentage of the rooms must be other than the standard? Okay. So
The standard 10 by 22,
yes.
something other than that?
Yeah.
It's bigger, right?
And it's up to the developer to figure out what he wants them to be, but 10 by 22 be the minimum size, and a certain percentage have to be in some way significantly different than the minimum standard cookie cutter room. Does that, would council be happy with that?
What percentage are you thinking, sir?
I'm not an architect, I don't know. Yeah, it's difficult to balance because we have to allow, we have to represent our interest and still allow the developer to make a profit, as the mayor said.
I'm sorry, I cut you off by turning on my light. I didn't mean to do that. But I'm wondering if it would be helpful for council if we were to go away and find out what the current configuration is, and then exchange that information to see what recommendation you might like, or what direction you might like them to give.
Councillor Simpson?
I'm troubled by trying, we're amateurs as far as development is concerned. Let's be serious. We can't just pick some figure out of the air and we don't know what is the threshold. I think the mayor spoke well when he said the project has its threshold of profitability that the developer knows about. We're not enamored of 71, but picking a figure, a percent, is really not our role. I don't see us doing that. I can't see us. As I said before, I'm not particularly concerned. I think, Councillor Sparkman, you were right, up to 71. If the units fall in numbers and the configuration makes sense, then that's what I'm looking at. But I don't know how I fix that number. I don't, without some further information.
Councillor Donovan.
I guess I don't have the same kind of problem with that. I would suggest let's start with 50% of the small units, then take the space that's left from the other 50% and figure out, how many units can you get that would be appropriate for a single working person who's got some money and a couple or a single senior. So I would start with that, and if the developer comes back and says that means that, so 50% of 71, about 35, 36, then take the space left over from the other 36, and can you get 20 out of that? Can you, I think that's, but we need to make it not a token, somebody else lives here. We need to make it a significant mix, and if we know that 50% are going to be students, then let's take the other 50% and be a mix of other demographics.
Deputy Mayor Mayor.
To tell you the truth, I'm not convinced that, that there aren't other people who would like to live in that size. I don't think it's necessarily going to be all students. I think that's not necessarily, you know, it just doesn't seem to be absolute. I think it's perhaps more likely. So I guess having said that, I would be a little more comfortable with, I guess if I'm trying to put myself in the shoes of the developer just a little bit, even though that's a bit of a stretch. So I would suggest that 50% probably wouldn't even come close.
Excuse me,
to
where's that back there? Thank you.
I don't think that even comes close to flying. So I certainly would be more comfortable saying, you know, to get some good chance of a mix, more in the neighborhood of 20%.
What is that next?
No, 20% other than the smaller. I can't imagine that would come close to flying.
The reason I suggested that is that's what he has in Antigonish, he has 35.
Or, thank you.
I thought I heard
Councilor Sparkman.
a suggestion that perhaps the developer already has a room layout different than what he's shown us. And if so, could we see that before we have, perhaps what he was planning, as it is written now, it's up to 71, perhaps what he's planning is already acceptable to council, but with all the cookie cutter rooms on the drawings we have, that's clearly not acceptable to council. So maybe that would be a different suggestion, just to see what he is planning